I'm really very happy to be back here at Nyima Tashi, and as you know, I come here mainly because of Anila, and she's such a dedicated practitioner and such a kind-hearted person, a real example, really, of what a Buddhist person should be. And I myself sort of take inspiration from her in terms of what one should be as a Buddhist. So, so I'm really very happy to be back here and to be spending time with Anila. And as already explained, the topic for this weekend is on dream yoga, and those of you who are familiar with the subject, I'm sure would understand that it's a very sort of advanced topic in some ways. But in other ways, it is not really all that advanced or all that esoteric, because Buddhism has always emphasized the notion of interplay between fact and fiction, and reality and irreality, and this is it's almost like a truism to say that's the truth. But Buddhism does, as you know, and I will elaborate on that notion as we go along. But what I thought I want to do tonight is just basically give you an introduction. Tomorrow we will focus on the philosophy of dream yoga, and on Sunday we will speak more about the practice of dream yoga. And I will try to do it in such a way that I'm not sort of giving away any kind of secrets or something, but on the other hand, I will make sure that people actually do understand what dream yoga practice involves, or what dream yoga philosophy is all about, and things like that. So tonight, what I want to do is talk about dream yoga in the context of Buddhist tradition, and in terms of why dream yoga is important, for example. Because dream yoga is not something that Theravadins talk about, or Zen Buddhists talk about. Dream yoga is something that Tibetan Buddhists focus on. And even within Tibetan Buddhism, usually it's the Kagyu and Nyima practitioners who focus more on this type of practice than the other forms of Tibetan Buddhism. Now, I'm not saying that the other Tibetan Buddhists do not do dream yoga practice. What I'm saying is that Kagyu Nyima people focus more on the on practices such as this. And dream yoga, as you would know, is one of the 6 yogas of Naropa, for example, that Marpa, the teacher of Milarepa, brought back to Tibet from India, and like in the 10th century or something like that. After Buddhism was wiped out, Buddhism was brought to Tibet in about the early 9th century, and then it was wiped out because of this anti-Buddhist king called Lang Dharma, and then Buddhism got reintroduced back into Tibet, and Marpa played a very important part in this revival of Buddhism in Tibet. And one of the teachings that he brought back from from India, was on dream yoga. Because he had learned about dream yoga, illusory body yoga, mystic heat yoga, these different kinds of esoteric practices from India, because he had spent time with these wandering yogis. They're like sadhus, if you want to imagine what a siddha, they're called siddhas, what they would have looked like, you just have to look at sadhus, modern day sadhus in India, and then you would get some idea about what they might have been like. Crazy guys. But anyway, this is the kind of people that Marpa was spending time with, and he brought these teachings back from India in about 10th century. We cannot be really too specific, but around about 10th century, and it became very sort of popular, in a short period of time. A lot of people started to practice illusory body yoga and mystic heat yoga and dream yoga and so forth. In those days, of course, the so-called 6 yogas of Naropa was not known as such. I mean, because there were just different kinds of yogas that you could go to India and learn. They came to be known as 6 yogas of Naropa once these practices became established back in Tibet and became formalized, and so then they came to be known as 6 yogas of Naropa or whatever. But Naropa was not the only one who was teaching these kinds of practices. There were other Mahasiddhas, like the sadhus that I spoke of, who also were doing this kind of practices. Anyway, I don't want to sort of go into the history of these practices too much. I just wanted to sort of say a few words by way of introduction to the practice of dream yoga. Now, dream yoga is based on a fundamental Buddhist belief, as I mentioned at the beginning. It is about relating to illusion and reality. What is real, what is not real, what is true, what is not true. And we're so habituated, according to Buddhist way of thinking, I mean, according to Buddhist teachings, that is. We're so accustomed to thinking that what is real, what is not real, is so definite. It's objectively given. And my mind does not have any role at all in terms of determining what I am experiencing or perceiving or whatever, because these things are given to me. You know, I perceive these things. This is the reality. But Buddhism says that is not true. What is real, what is unreal, is not something that we can determine very easily. So, based on this idea, we practice dream yoga. Because when we practice dream yoga, in dream, we think whatever we are experiencing is as real as what we experience while we are awake. You know, in our waking hours, we smell things, we taste, we touch, and you know, all the sensory experiences, and then we conceptualize about all kinds of things, and then we have emotional responses to various situations and all kinds of things like that. Now, that in itself might not be seen as something, you know, all that informative, or you know, all that radical. But Buddhism goes further. What it says is, not only that is the case, that like our mind is always involved in determining what kind of experiences that we have. But our mind and even our body are intimately related. So we cannot understand the practice of dream yoga if we cannot sort of appreciate this notion that the mind and body are intimately related. This is because in Buddhism we speak about many different levels of the mind. You know, we have what we call gross mind, gross levels of mind, and then we have what we call subtle levels of mind. And corresponding to that, we have gross levels of the body and subtle levels of the body. And so, by relating to the subtle bodies, you know, by relating to the different aspects of the subtle body, to put it simply, I'll explain more as we progress with this subject. But for now, I'll just call it subtle body.